Okay, I am so excited to have you back on the podcast, lady.
Yay! I know. I've been like looking forward to this all day.
And I also really love why you are back on the podcast because I am so excited about your new book.
Oh my God, thank you. Like it honestly feels surreal. I feel like we have been talking about this for years and I'm like, it's a month away. I never thought this day would come.
Yeah. Yeah, and for everyone listening to this, the book has already come out by the time you're listening to
Right.
this. So we're recording this a little bit earlier, obviously, because it comes out during the holiday season. But it is like, what was it like to like hold the book in your hands for the first time?
Oh my God, it was crazy. I honestly had like an out of body experience because it was so the whoever it was came to the door, they knocked, and I was like, oh, this is a book. And I'm thinking it's someone else's book. And I start walking up the stairs and I'm like, I wonder if this is my book. And then I was like, I don't want to open it by myself if it's my book and all the things. So I opened the bottom of it and I see my name on it. And Wilder was actually home. I think he was homesick that day. And I saw my name and it was just this shock. I'm like, oh my God, this is my book. So I ended up putting it on the table because I was like, I need to open this with someone, with Mike or with someone. And then it almost became this bigger deal. I was going out that night. I might have even been meeting you. And so I'm like, okay, well, we'll look at it, when we have time. And then the next night, things just got crazy. And I built it in my head to be this thing of when is the perfect time to see it for the first time and to hold it. And then when we did look at it, it was almost like I had built it up in my head to be, it was almost, I don't know, like I was just like, I don't even know what to think of this and I can't really process what's happening right now. So it honestly took me a few days to really be like, whoa, okay, this is my book and just take some time with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that I have it actually right here,
Yay!
I'm always pulling recipes
It's
from
so
it.
pretty.
Thank you. But yeah, it's been pretty cool now to like show it to the kids because there's some photos of them in there and just pulling recipes from it. And now it almost feels like it should be out by now because I've had it for a couple months. But yeah, it's just, as you know, such a long process. You go through so many different like waves of emotions throughout.
Yeah. Well, and I think for, dietitians and then like us specifically doing the kind of work we do, so
Hmm.
much of what we do is either service based, it's about talking to someone,
Hmm.
or, we put a post on the internet. Like it's all very ephemeral. And like, is this how architects feel? Like to actually have something tangible, like you can see and you can hold from your work is like the coolest feeling. And we don't
Yeah.
often get that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a very cool feeling to see just all of this work over the past, really for me it was almost a 4-year process from proposal to print. So yeah, it's pretty surreal to see it and hold it in my hands.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about the process later, but I want to get
Mhm.
into immediately because, when people are listening to this, it is January. And
Yes.
January is very much a time of, people taking stock or feeling like absolute garbage from the holiday season because all they did was party for 30 days. And
Yeah.
so, they're
3 days
really,
past 2 weeks.
yeah, they're really craving some sort of change. And
Mhm.
something that I appreciate so much about the way you communicate with people is that you really show them that creating, because we talk about balance a lot as dietitians,
Mhm.
and it's such a strange term because balance could mean a lot of things to a lot of
Mhm.
different people, but you lead with such a positive message. And I think for people, particularly around this time of year, there
Mhm.
can be a lot of sort of like swinging of the pendulum. So the
Yes,
idea that like December, there's so much pressure to feast, and in January, there's so much pressure to sort of pay penance. And so,
absolutely.
like, how do we escape that? Like, for you as a dietitian, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges we actually face in just being consistent with a
Mhm.
healthier approach to eating?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of things, but I think one of the biggest things is just the amount of information that we are bombarded with. So, first of all, like the sheer volume of information. And then on top of that, so much of that information is contradictory. A lot of it is misinformation. And often there is this messaging wrapped up in it that we can't trust ourselves, right? It's all around this focus on these external guidelines and measures to determine whether or not we are doing it right or doing it well enough. So whether that is calories or macros or points or any variation of that, whether it's eating windows with intermittent fasting or whatever it is, so much of that messaging is follow this external messaging, the idea that someone else knows our needs better than we do. And I don't blame people for this because there is so much information and there's so much confusion amongst that information. There's a certain comfort in having those rigid and strict guidelines because it's like, okay, I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to follow this and I can check the box and I know that I'm doing it right. But when we do this, we are sort of actively disconnecting from our own bodies. So I always kind of explain this to clients, like when we're stuck in our head with these rules, checking these boxes, we are actively out of our bodies. And by that, I mean that connection to our internal cues, like our hunger, our fullness, what leaves us feeling satisfied after eating. So I think that really is a huge part of it. And really so much of it comes back to coming back to that trust of our own internal cues. And, really we are all born intuitive eaters. We do have that within us, but it just gets really confusing. So I think that is a huge part of the consistency because first of all, there's so many different things that we're always jumping around from, like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? We try something out for a short amount of time and then it doesn't feel like it's sticking. So we jump to the next. We don't even give ourselves a chance to see how we feel with something kind of sticking to it long term. But the other part of it is we really don't even know how we feel because we are never really checking in with ourselves. So I think that that's one of the biggest things. I don't know if you'd agree with that or kind of what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, there's so many things that I could turn back to. One, particularly because for us in our practice that is focused so much on digestive health, we
Mm-hmm.
do get a very sort of anxious client
Yeah.
who similarly, because they feel in pain and they've been feeling terrible for so long, they do sort of, oh, I saw this thing on the internet, I'm going to try that, and 10 days later I'm going to try something else. And a big part of how we counsel is understanding that consistency is really the secret sauce and being able to slow
Absolutely.
down and really be consistent with one thing because it takes
Yes.
time for the body to respond, and particularly for the digestive tract. The gut loves
Mm-hmm.
routine. So if you are constantly trying something different, like two,
Yeah.
3 times a week, or like multiple times you're shifting gears per month, but it is exactly the same thing for us too, that there are so many voices, people saying, don't eat whole grains. Whole grains are bad for your gut, or
Mm-hmm.
you should be eating 4 cups of beans a day for your, like, it's just so confusing. And I really love what you said about being focused to these external sources versus internal. And I have a question for you about that, because sometimes I will talk to people about hunger and satiety, and I will encounter, adults who say, well, I never feel hungry. I don't know what that feels like, or I never get
Mm-hmm.
full. Like,
Yeah.
if someone is saying, great, sure, I want to check in with like my internal cues, but like, I don't think I have internal cues. What does someone
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. And I think I want to first kind of validate that because that is very common, especially for someone who has been, quote unquote dieting. And I say that because we don't always recognize that it's a diet or it's not always labeled as a diet. Like, we know that the marketing in the food and wellness world is very good and has a way of having us believe, oh, it's just a lifestyle change. And not to say that we can't change our lifestyle, but what is our intention and what's kind of driving it, and what is that? Where's that information coming from? So I think, with that, when we have relied on those external factors and guidelines for so long, we truly can become disconnected. And sort of the longer we've been doing it, the more disconnected we are. So I hear that a lot from people, that they don't feel like they have those cues, but they are in there. Like, I promise you, they are buried somewhere within there. And the first step really is, I kind of teach this framework. I call it the map it process with my clients. And the first step of that is mindful awareness. And the mindfulness piece is huge because mindfulness, simply put, is awareness without judgment. So that really is the first step in my eyes to making change, even to our eating, because before we're aware of what we're doing or what's causing us issue or where we're feeling misaligned, we can't make a change, right? So often that starts with tuning into just paying attention to what are the thoughts I'm having around food, what are the thoughts I'm having when it comes time to eat. It can also be mindfully tuning into what sensations are happening in your body. So both a mental and a physical scan. So sometimes hunger can show up as thinking about food a lot, right? Which a lot of people who've been restricted and on different diets, this is constant all throughout the day. So there's a lot of signs that aren't the typical like grumbling stomach that actually are signs of hunger. So again, thinking of food a lot, feeling irritable. I know that was a huge one for me when I was not eating enough. It was just like grumpy and irritable. And I mean, not that that doesn't still happen at
The
times, but
hangries are real.
yeah, like that is anger, or feeling lightheaded or lethargic. There's so many different things. So it's just starting to get curious about that and noticing. And again, that without judgment piece is huge, because if we're judging ourselves and saying like, oh, of course I'm, of course I can't do this, or of course I have no willpower today, or of course I'm hungry again, we are again going to rely on those external factors to feel better about ourselves. Like, okay, well, if I just follow these calories for this meal or measure this out, then I'm doing it right. And so that cycle continues, right? So that mindful awareness is a huge piece, and just relearning what hunger actually feels like in your body. And there are really tangible tools. So there are things like a hunger fullness scale. So tools like that can be really helpful as we're relearning and reconnecting with our bodies. And similarly with fullness, again, there's often, if we're just thinking, okay, am I meeting those portions, those macros, those eating times, we're just never really checking in. So we don't know what hunger and fullness feel like in our body, but they are there. And again, it takes that practice and consistency.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, for someone who is listening, and maybe they're listening because their goal in 2025 is
Mm,
to eat well, but they've decided that once and for all, they are going to ditch that idea of a diet or,
yeah.
a quote unquote detox. And they just truly want to get healthy for maybe
Hmm.
the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
Something that I appreciate about you is we both share this non restrictive, positive approach to nutrition. And to take those guardrails off and that rigidity off can feel
Mhm.
untethering for someone. So,
Absolutely.
for that person who's like, I sort of don't know what it means to eat healthfully if I'm
Mhm.
not on a diet, like, what does healthy eating mean to you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think, to me, healthy eating is eating in a way, yes, that supports our physical health, our energy, our long-term health. And there is place for that. And I think often with like intuitive eating, there's this misunderstanding that we can't kind of honor or even prioritize our health and our nutrition, but that could not be further from the truth. Like that is a pillar of intuitive eating. And not to get off topic, but generally that's kind of why I start with sort of that mindset piece and reconnecting with the body even before really looking at nutrition, because otherwise it really can just become more rules and more guidelines. And so that piece, that foundation is really important. So before that, I would almost encourage them to consider that. But in terms of healthy eating, kind of a continuation of that is, yes, we want, healthy eating is about that physical nutrition aspect of food, but it's also about looking at what sort of implication mentally and emotionally do these food choices have on us. So, if we are so stressed out about going over our calories or about, eating the croissant or whatever it may be that we feel is not quote unquote good, that can actually have physical repercussions on us too, right? So we know that that stress can have, even more severe physical effects than the foods we might be so scared of. So really, to me, healthy eating is about finding sort of peace and ease in nourishing ourselves for you to feel as well as we can physically, in our energy and in our health, but also allowing space for food to be a part of our life, for the simple joy it brings or pleasure it brings or connection. And so I think for me, you can't really have one without the other. It really has to be looking at how are our food choices impacting our overall wellness and all three of that physical, mental, and emotional well-being piece.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's for many people still like a dramatic lifestyle and mindset shift to think, you know, what is most nourishing for me in this moment? So
Yes.
instead of letting someone else tell me what is most nourishing for me in this moment.
Yeah.
And maybe right now you're like, I'm actually really craving vegetables and a kale salad would be
Mhm.
fantastic. But
Yeah,
maybe it's like, I'm craving comfort and I want to bake some chocolate chip cookies with my kids and I want to eat those,
totally.
it like there is a place for both. And it's not that in spite of healthy eating, but that is part
Yes.
of healthy eating, which I think is really sort of mind blowing for some people.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I always use with clients, which is like, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself in this moment? And it really is transformative for them in the sense of it, again, allows them that connection. Like, you really can't make the wrong decision when you're considering what is the most loving thing I can do. And it's very similar to what you were just saying. And when we approach it that way, we may have seen a salad as a diet food for years, but as we start to heal that relationship with food, we can see like, wow, actually, I want to, that's going to actually feel really nourishing and energizing. And I actually do like the crunch and I don't have to skip the dressing because I'm afraid of fats, right? So it allows us both the permission to invite some of those foods back in that might have been sort of taken by diet culture, or sort of reframe the way we look at that foods as like, oh, I have to eat this because it's healthy, to wow, this is going to be really nourishing for me right now. And in that same breath, it can give us that permission, like you said, to enjoy the chocolate chip cookie for the experience it is with our kids and for ourselves, right? So I mean, you had kind of asked what is healthy eating, and there's so much we could talk about as dietitians. We could get into all of the talking about vegetables and balancing our plate and all those things, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I really just can't stress enough how important it is to build that foundation of a healthy relationship with food for those that may be struggling with it. And when you put the time into that, honestly, the nutrition and the food stuff really can feel quite easy, because for most people, they know all of these things. It's that battle of trying to be good and restricting, and then overeating because they feel so restricted. And it's like, that's the cycle. It's not the issue of knowing that vegetables are healthy or not.
Yeah.
Right.
No, exactly. And I think because we are inundated with so much information, so many opinions, so many different
Mhm.
voices now. But when we close our eyes and say, look at a healthy plate, like I think most of us would get it, right? Like
Right.
it's probably something you made at home. It's probably got vegetables on that plate. It's probably got some grains. It's probably got some protein. Like most of us intuitively are not confused about a nourishing way to eat.
Right.
It's just that we go on the internet or we override because we've been told that we need to look a certain way or eat in a certain way. And there's so much just self-worth and like wrapped up in that
Mhm.
too. It's yeah. I mean, we're still having this conversation, right? We have this conversation constantly because
Yeah.
so many people are still just in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to shift a little bit. I mean, this all goes together, but I do want to shift because you do wear these two hats, this intuitive eating dietitian, but also this meal planning dietitian. People will be like, how do those two things go together?
Totally.
But for the person who really wants to live their healthiest life, the reality is you have to figure out how to feed yourself and have
Mhm.
that not be a stressful
Yeah.
part of your day, which is why I love your new book. I mean, I love you in general, but I love your new book. And like the
Thank you.
photos and everything just make eating in a nourishing way so inviting and
Aw.
exciting. So tell us a little bit more about your brand new book.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny to think of. I think for a lot of people, they would never look at intuitive eating and meal planning, certainly not meal prep, as going hand in hand. And for that very reason, I used to be like anti meal prep, anti meal plans. But it has been probably the biggest thing clients have asked me for since I started working as a dietitian almost 15 years ago, because again, there's so much information. It's like, okay, great, but how do I apply this while I'm doing all of these other things that I'm trying to accomplish in my life? And so over the years, what I learned is that really like meal prep and planning can be one of the greatest tools to eat intuitively, because one of the biggest things is eating regularly throughout the day so that we can reconnect with those cues. When we are overly hungry, when our blood sugars are low, that's usually when we feel out of control around food, or like we can't connect with those hunger cues or those fullness cues. So it really is, in my opinion, one of the best things we can do to start with is just setting ourselves up a little bit to save time and save stress. So that is really what my goal was in this book. I created these meal plans like almost 10 years, probably over 10 years ago now. And that was how my editor found me, was through those meal plans. And she approached me about writing a meal prep and meal planning book. But she really did get that essence of who I was, of this intuitive eating side, and really wanting food to feel joyful and flexible and exciting. And that was really what made me say yes to this book. Like, I had been approached before to write, a crockpot cookbook, or, basically to fill a role of what a publisher was looking for. But this really felt like me and something I was excited about. And truly is something I've dreamed of doing since I was a kid. Like, I used to staple together pieces of paper and, draw in them and make these weird recipes of like crackers and hot chocolate powder and cheese. That's where my recipes have gotten better. But I have like loved food in this way, and sharing food with people. That's always been such a huge part of our family and our life, and kind of how we connect is over food. But it can feel so stressful. So that was kind of what started the idea for this book. And it's sort of been an evolution, sort of the way that I meal prep and meal plan over the years. So it's not exactly the same as those initial meal plans I created, but the concept is the same, in sort of combining different meal prep methods so that you get the benefit of meal prep, which is time saving, money saving, simplifying, taking some of that mental load off, preventing all of that overthinking, and just really simplifying the act of getting those nourishing meals on the table every night. So the book itself does include 4 weeks of meal plans. And the meal plans have grocery lists. They have the weekly meal prep laid out. The goal was to keep the meal prep under 2 hours, because for me, again, I don't want meal prep to be this thing where we sacrifice our Sunday to spend all day in the kitchen and miss out on life. The whole point of this is to be able to live more of your life, be more present, and save time so that you can actually play with your kids after school, or meet up with a friend, or whatever it is. So the goal is for the meal prep to be done under 2 hours. Sometimes it's an hour and a half. And then it's this combination of, there is some batch prep, which we can talk a little bit more about the different styles of meal
Yeah.
prep, but it combines the methods. So that's sort of where my approach is unique, is it also applies that idea that we don't need to think in black and white or be all or none. Like, we don't have to only do batch prep or only eat these types of foods. I was almost giving myself permission too, that like, it's okay to combine these forms of meal prep to really find a solution that's going to work for people, to both save time, but be able to get that variety and eat fresh food every night in the way that they might be craving. I feel
Yeah,
like that was a
because
bit of a tangent there.
yeah, no, but that's really good too, because I think we should maybe define it, because some people might think of meal prepping as you cook everything on Sunday and
Yeah.
you put like your lunches in different containers and your dinner, and
Mhm.
they're just made, and that's not actually what you do. I mean, that's great if you just want to set it and forget it, and
Yeah.
I don't know, you work 14 hours a day Monday through
Right.
Friday and you're like, I just can't cook. But that's not actually what you're doing. So the
Right.
idea is like a couple of hours on the weekend, and what are we doing in those
Yeah.
hours?
Yeah. And you're totally right about that. When you were talking about the visuals in the book and stuff, I'm like, I want meal prep to feel fun and exciting and fresh, and not, I think how we typically see a meal prep, and certainly what my idea of it was before, when I was so against it, was like you said, those 5 containers with the chicken and broccoli and rice, or you're eating like chili every day of the week or something like that. And so what my approach is on the weekend is that usually I will pick 1, maybe 2 batch prep meals. So batch prep meals are meals that you prep in a large quantity that you can eat multiple times throughout the week. So that might be something like a chili, or I have a veggie bolognese in there. There's different recipes like that, where you can make a big batch. While you're making 4 servings of it, you might as well make 12, because it's no extra work. And then that meal is completely done for you during the week. So that big batch veggie bolognese is one example. We usually don't mind eating pasta a couple times a
Yeah.
week. So usually there's one big batch meal happening. And then within that, we're breaking that up into some ingredient prep. So ingredient prep is where I get really like nerdy and excited, and it's kind of my preferred method. And really what it is it's pretty self-explanatory, but you are prepping individual ingredients that can be mixed and matched into a variety of different meals throughout the week. So when I'm looking at meal planning, I'm always looking to see what are similar ingredients that I can kind of apply to different meals that will be completely different. So while I'm making that bolognese, I might be shredding extra carrots that can go into a poke bowl or into a salad bowl later on in the week. I might be, if it's a dish where I'm doing some ground round or ground turkey, again, I'm going to double or triple the amount that I'm making. Part of that's going to go into the pasta sauce. Part of it can go into some tacos later in the week or into, a chili or something like that, right? So I'm looking at what are similar ingredients that can be repurposed in totally different ways so that that ingredient is ready on the night of, but I'm actually making a fresh dinner that's going to come together in about 15 minutes, right? So you've got your protein cooked, you've got a bunch of different veggies washed and cut up. I will also often cook a grain of some sort. And then again, you've got these components. You have a couple of meals that are totally ready that you just reheat on the night of. And then the other meals come together really quickly, but it eliminates that. I think what kind of turns people off often about meal prep you're not eating the same thing every night.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like leftovers. And so you still get fresh food that you're only eating once or twice, but you are getting all those benefits of time saving.
Yeah. Well, and that really speaks to the idea of looking inward to, what do I like? What do I like to eat? How much time do I have to cook? What's a deal breaker for me? Some people say, tell me what to eat. I will just eat it. I don't want
Yeah,
to think about it.
totally.
Whereas exactly, yeah, I'll just eat the same thing 5 nights a week. I don't care. Whereas for me, I am so stubborn that whatever, if I was like, oh, I'm going to do that Monday through Friday, I'm just going to make this and I'm going to eat this every day. By Tuesday, my stubborn brain would be like, no, I
Yeah.
reject you. I need something else entirely.
Totally. And then it's like, and then you're back to like ordering in, and not that there's anything wrong with that. But when you kind of want to save that for the times when you want to and you're going to enjoy it rather than that necessity of like, well, I don't have anything to cook. Right. So yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways you can do it. And for the person that does like to have everything ready on Sunday, when you have those components ready to go, you actually could make each of those meals. Like you could spend another hour and all of those meals would come together. And some people do choose to do that. But then if you, don't want to spend all of Sunday and want to cook some of those meals fresh, you have that option too. So my initial meal plans were something called the 3-2-1 method. And it was much more simple where you would prep 3 veggies, 2 proteins, and 1 carbohydrate. And the idea was that you have all the building blocks for a balanced meal, and then you fill those in with more options via what I call fast food. So maybe veggies that don't take any extra time to prep, like, baby carrots or cherry tomatoes. So this method is really an expansion of that, where you have those core ingredients prepped to provide a balanced meal for you, but with a little bit more built out options in there that someone really can tailor to what they want to do. So again, like you said, whether you want to cook all those meals Sunday, the foods and the options are there, but you can also kind of take it step by step throughout the week while still getting quick meals on the table.
Yeah, I love that. Ingredient prep is a big one for me. Like I'll walk past the pantry and say, oh, well, look at those dried chickpeas. Okay, let me just throw them in a pot and I will just
Yeah.
do it alongside. And then it's so nice when you
Yes.
have them and then you're like, oh, I have chickpeas. So I can make like a chickpea tuna. No problem. Like
Exactly.
I love that. For me, like my personality, the ingredient prep really resonates with me because I just
Yeah,
love opening the fridge and be like, oh, those are already started for me. So I can
totally.
just like riff off them and dinner will be quicker.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think the other benefit of ingredient prep, without going too far into this, is just that it also allows you, like, if you do feel like something different that night, as you get more comfortable with cooking and with swapping in recipes, because really recipes are a template, right? Like you can swap a different protein in there. So if you get to that night and you don't feel like exactly the recipe that's on that page, you still have all of those ingredients to create something that you feel like eating that night.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk grocery shopping
Okay.
because I mean, I'm no model here because I do not meal prep or plan and I develop recipes, which means I probably run to the grocery store 4 to 5 times a week,
Hmm.
which is a huge time suck. I mean,
Yeah.
inefficient in the extreme. So, like from you, the expert, talking to all of us, how would you tell us to help streamline the grocery shopping process? Like, how do we make this less of a chore?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's I like laugh when you say the expert because I could not have been further from this. So I just want anyone that's listening to know that if you're like, I am not that person, the meal prepper, the meal planner, if I can do it, you can too, because this was not me. But over time, I have certainly learned like all of the tricks of the trade. So when it comes to grocery shopping, I always recommend like shop your house and your pantry first. Again, with that notion that recipes are a template, if you have a can of beans in there, if you have some chicken already in the freezer, if you have some leftover veggies from last week, you don't need to rebuy everything, right? Like you can look at how can I swap this protein into that recipe, or how can I swap these veggies into this recipe so that you're not going to go bad. They're not going to go bad. You're not going to be wasting your time and money. So that would be the first thing. Having a grocery list, like going to the grocery store with a list, is absolutely game changing. And that really is one of the goals. And the way that I create meal plans is to provide an exact list with every item on there so that you aren't missing one thing and going back for it later in the week. And for anyone that's creating their own grocery list, I always recommend to organize it by section of the grocery store, because that will make it so much easier when you are actually at the store. You know, not running back and forth between the aisles, especially if you have little ones in tow, it just makes it so much easier. And probably my number one tip is to order online. Like, I remember when I used to work in the hospital and online grocery shopping was more tailored towards like the older population that maybe couldn't get out of the house. We swear by this and we pretty much solely order online. I mean, again, with the recipe developing and doing this often, I am sometimes running out to grab stuff for photo shoots or whatever it may be. But most of the time, because I have that planning done, I just like pop the grocery order online, it gets delivered. And if you are new to meal prep and meal planning, you can look at that as an hour of your time gained back to put towards the meal prep, right? So if you save an hour driving to the grocery store, going there, picking everything out, and bringing that home, you can then apply that time to the meal prep, which is going to save you even more time throughout the week. So I think those are some of the top tips. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think that's a lot of it, is just being organized, using your resources. Oh, sorry. The last thing I will say though, which is along the lines of the prep and planning, is to use like ingredients in your meals for the week, right? So again, looking at how can I use cabbage in 3 different recipes, or how can I use that tofu in a couple of different ways, which is, for one, going to cut down on your grocery bill. It's going to cut down on the number of items that you have to get and spend your time grabbing. And it's also just going to make that prep easier. So even if you're not doing a full out meal prep on the weekend, say on Monday night, you're making a tofu curry, chop up some extra tofu, pan fry it while you're doing it for the curry, take half of that out, and then use it for a bowl on Wednesday night, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can save time by looking at how you can use like ingredients across different recipes throughout the week.
Yeah, that is such a game changer, particularly because you said cabbage, because how often are we forced to buy a cabbage that is
Right.
4 times the amount we need? And then you're like, well, bye-bye cabbage. Like, I'm not going to see you again.
Yeah. And then you
No,
cut
no,
it up
no,
and it
use it.
expands like 10 times.
I know. Thank goodness it lasts a long time, but it's so
Yeah.
true. So that idea of, because you're shopping your fridge first,
Mm-hmm.
if you have an idea of something you want to make on a Thursday night, you look in your fridge and go, oh, well, if that's broccoli, like I could probably do cauliflower because that's what I have.
Mm-hmm.
Or if that calls for udon noodles, but I actually have some ramen already, like that's probably going to be okay too. So again,
Exactly.
we're reducing waste, reducing cost at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I got to ask you, because we are at different parenting
Mm-hmm.
stages. Bless your heart. I'm glad. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with
I'm
the
at
little
the
kid
absolute
stage.
chaos stage.
Yes, you are at the absolute chaos stage. Mine is more managed. So, because you have 2 young kids and you do this meal sort of prepping, planning, like how do you navigate feeding little ones with different
Mhm.
needs, different tastes while you're thinking about the family meal?
Yeah, I mean, we have always, like from the beginning, just fed our kids what we are eating. And I'm certainly not going to say that every night they're eating all of that and they're never complaining about it. I will say our son, like our first kid, he really just ate everything without ever questioning it. Our daughter is a little bit more selective. I think she just knows there's more options. She's been exposed to a lot more from a younger age because she has an older brother. But so within that, like that's one of the things I love about ingredient prep is that, you know, when you batch prep something, that meal is made and that's what you have to serve. When you do ingredient prep, you can kind of do deconstructed versions. You can mix and match them a little bit. So yes, we're serving the main foundations of the meal. Usually we try for it to be the same thing. But say if we have something that's a little bit spicier, coming back to that example of say a tofu curry, right? If you had the tofu prepped or chicken or whatever your protein was, to go into that night, you still have that protein to serve to those kids. And maybe you slice up some fruit along the side there. Maybe you put some of the rice that was going with the curry, you add some of the veggies on there. Or say if they don't like the peppers cooked, but they like them raw, you still have that component ready to go that can go on the plate. So I think it's a combination of serving them what the family is eating, but without so much pressure of you have to eat this, you have to finish it, make sure you try it. It's kind of letting them see you eating these new foods, encouraging them to try it without pressure, and then making sure that there's at least one safe food on the table for them. So for us, we often will have like fruit cut up on the table at breakfast, or some veggies on there, or maybe sometimes it's some bread, whatever that may be, to just give them choices and allow them to explore new foods without making completely different meals or getting up from the table 50,000 times. Not that also doesn't often happen somehow.
Yeah, just getting, kids under 5 to the table for 5 minutes flat. You're like, I'm winning today.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't always feel like that, but
yeah, we've done a good job. No, and I think that's really helpful too, because even circling back to the way the episode started was, so many of us have absorbed these messages about what healthy is and how we quote unquote should or shouldn't eat. And as parents, we now have this opportunity to raise kids with a healthier regard for themselves, for their autonomy and their own intuition around eating. And so I really like that idea of modeling, well, here's what the family's eating, but knowing like, well, you're probably not going to like this at all. So, like those sliced oranges and that rice, that's for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it is the less pressure you put on them, the more likely they usually are to try things out, or even if it's not at that meal or the next one in the future, they're not going to have this idea that this food is good, that food is bad, I need to earn my food, all of those layers that go into our relationship with food.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it is the first episode of 2025 and we're in that January zone.
Yeah.
And you're one of the only people that I would really want to know your opinion on this. Most people are like, don't listen to them, do your own thing. But Lindsay, from you, I want to know, for everyone listening to this episode, what would you say are sort of your top 3, like very concrete, actionable tips that people can take to become healthier in 2025?
Good question. So I will put aside the whole, reconnecting with your body and working on a relationship with food, kind of assuming that you're in a peaceful place with that, or maybe working on that at the same time. Like, are you talking kind of more specifically with food?
Yeah, like sort of positive additive behaviors.
Yeah. So I think that's the first thing, like you said, is my focus is always around what can I add versus what do I need to stop eating, or what do I need to cut out? Right. And so I would say kind of overall take an inventory and address what your biggest pain point is, right? So if you are never eating breakfast because you don't have time, like we know that our breakfast is going to kind of set the tone for the rest of our day in terms of our blood sugars and how hungry we are and how much energy we have. Or if you are just not getting enough veggies, so kind of establish what is your biggest pain point and then start with one thing like we talked about. So for a lot of my clients, it is breakfast. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, either choose one breakfast that you can kind of repeat and become consistent with, like we talked about. I mean, for me, breakfast is a meal that I could eat the same thing, honestly, like every day. I don't need a ton of variety at breakfast, whereas other meals I might need a little bit more variety. So whether that is meal prepping, some overnight oats, or some breakfast burritos, or choosing one option, because breakfasts are also very quick to meal prep. So it might be setting yourself up with one of those if you know your mornings are crazy, that you can even grab on the way out the door. And what I always look at is like, what is the ripple effect of that one decision? So having breakfast, you're not going to be starving when you arrive at work and just scouring for whatever's available, or finding yourself in the evening that you haven't eaten enough. And again, you have that sense of being out of control around food. So I would say breakfasts are a big one. Either pick something easy that you like, eggs on toast or a tofu scramble or whatever it is that you can make in 5-10 minutes and repeat, and then bring variety in once you're comfortable with the routine, or pick something that you can quickly meal prep and stick to that. I think veggies are one of the biggest bang for our buck kind of things, right? That in terms of, they're highly nutritious. They have a ton of fiber, which is going to be good for our blood sugar balance, for our gut, for so many different things in our body. They are packed with vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. Like, there's no arguing that veggies are healthy. So that is one place that I'll also, have people look at, is like, where might you be able to add a little bit more in? And there are two simple things that I do most weeks that are guaranteed to have our whole family eating more veggies. So the first one is I will just wash and cut up some vegetables and make a dip, like a tasty dip. So I love dips that
Me
are,
too.
again, maybe not the right crowd here. I was going to say Greek yogurt or cottage cheese based,
Oh,
but you could do this with tofu or a plant-based yogurt or different things like that. But I would try to make a dip that has a decent protein base so that we're also going to feel a little bit more full and satisfied from it. And then wash and cut up a couple different veggies. For us lately, it's been like garden style carrots that we used to always get the baby carrots, and nothing against them, but I'm like, these garden carrots they just taste so good. So it's been washing, cutting up some of those, and then the mini bell peppers. I just love them. They're just sweeter and tastier. And I limit it to two because, again, don't need a lot of variety. And then those are ready. And it's not to say, oh, I can only snack on veggies and dip, but I might add those veggies and dip to an energy ball or to some chips or to some crackers. But they're there and they're ready to go. And then the other thing I will often do is make one big batch salad. So I'll make a big salad. Again, if I'm doing it once, I might as well do it for 5 portions for the rest of the week. So I will choose heartier greens like kale, or even sometimes the spring mixes are good. I will usually mix in some cabbage or like a slaw type mixture. And then I'll just kind of chop up the vegetables on top. I might add some like feta cheese on there, or some nuts. Often I will put on there like pumpkin seeds. So I'll keep that kind of on the top so that it doesn't get all soggy. And then throughout the week, we have that either for a side for lunches or for dinners. And because again, I find that often that's the easiest part to go when you don't have enough time to make a meal. Like the veggies, they do take a long time to wash and cut up, and they aren't the most exciting. So they often get missed. So those two things take, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and those are ready for the week. So one would be breakfast, two would be the veggies, and snacks too. Snacks get such a bad name, but planned snacks are one of the best tools that you can implement, again, to stabilize your blood sugars, to give you more energy throughout the day, to prevent getting overly hungry and to that point where you feel out of control around meals. And so again, it can either be, prepping something simple that you enjoy, that you're going to look forward to, or it can be a store-bought option. And I think that that's the thing too, is we need to remove that guilt. It's okay to eat packaged foods, right? So if that's what's gonna, not even if it's just, if that's what's gonna, allow you to snack, but if it's something you're excited about and something you enjoy, like have a few store-bought options in hand that are 100% going to be there and ready for you to go if you don't prep something that week, and then explore some new recipes. And again, snacks are a really kind of easy, low effort, high return food that you can prep.
all of those. I love that you mentioned coleslaw, which to me is the MVP of the
Mhm.
produce section. It's
Absolutely.
so inexpensive. It's an instant vegetable. And it doesn't wilt. I
Yeah.
love it. I love coleslaw so
Yeah,
much.
put it in salads and wraps and tacos and like anything, right? And it's like a heartier vegetable too, that is going to give you a bit of more of that fiber, a bit more of that filling factor. And again, it's going to last you. Like we actually just went away and had a bag of slaw in the fridge, and it was still good when we got home. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's food safe or not, but it lasts and it will be there for you.
Yeah. And then you just cook it. If there's a question, you just cook it
Exactly.
instead of like eat it raw.
Right.
Okay.
Nobody sue us for food safety here.
Yeah, exactly. We're not the experts there. Okay, this is the perfect point to switch into the rapid fire.
Okay.
First question. It's the worst question. As a cookbook author, I hate this question, but I'm still going to ask you,
Oh
as a
God,
new cookbook
nervous.
author, with a twist.
Okay.
What is your kids' favorite recipe from the new book?
Oh, okay. Well, one of them, so there actually is one recipe called Wilder's avocado tostadas. I don't know if it's his favorite now, but it was like one of his favorites, where we would just crisp up a tortilla and then put a fried egg on there, some salsa, some feta, some avocado. And he would just always ask for these around the time I was writing the book. So that is one of them. Oh my gosh, this is such a hard question.
I know it's the worst.
Uh, it's hard to think about. There's a mac and cheese, like a homemade mac and cheese in there that they love. There's some no bake chocolate tahini granola bars that are nut free, and so they love those, and they're great for lunches to mix things up a little bit. Oh, it's so hard to think on the spot, but those are some of the ones that come to mind.
Those are good. Those are awesome. Okay, next one, because I don't know how you do it, because I'm pretty sure I didn't do it when my kids were the age that your kids are, but I know you actually still make time for fitness. So what's your favorite workout these days?
Yes. And you know what? Again, this is something that has really changed as my relationship with food transformed, like moving my body to. And I just know for me now, it really is about how I'm going to feel mentally for the rest of the day. Never thought I'd be a morning person, but I do get up around 5, and I have this year, like January of this year, I started doing a lot more like weight training. So I use this app called, I think it's called Evolve You. I don't know if it's called Evolve You or Evolve, but it's an app. And so I do mostly like strength training now and then walking. I used to do a lot of running, but I mainly do strength training. And then I try to like just get outside and move my body throughout the day. But I honestly have been loving the strength training. Like I just feel really good after, and I enjoy the process of it. I put some music on, and I want to feel strong going into turning 40 next year. And I want to be strong and save my bones.
Yeah, I love that. I'm exactly the same as you. I'm not running, I'm walking, and I'm doing strength. That's 100%
Mhm.
my focus now too. And I feel really good. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
love it.
I was a soccer player, and like running it just became very unenjoyable. Like we had to do so much of it, and I've
Yeah.
accepted that I'm not a runner.
It's okay. We can be walkers.
Okay,
Okay.
exactly.
What are you watching right now?
Oh man, okay. Full confession, I'm such
Mhm.
a reality TV girly.
I know
um,
that's specifically why I wanted to ask.
yes, but right now, like none of them are on. So the ones that I usually love, I do my guilty pleasures are like Vanderpump, Summer House, what other ones? Southern Charm sometimes, yes and no. But right now I don't really have a show and I need one. So I've been reading more, which is good because of that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
love reality TV. I think it's just that ability to be able to shut my brain off. Like when my kids are in bed and the day is over, I have no more brain capacity. And I'm like, I just want something mindless. And it's just entertaining.
And you didn't do the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. You
Oh,
haven't
I
gone
did.
into that.
Yeah, I did
Oh,
do that one. I was at my girlfriend. I was like, I need a new show. And she was like, oh, watch this one. I'm like, And then I started and I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. I wouldn't say it was my favorite one, but it was definitely entertaining.
another mean question. Mango or pineapple? You can only choose one.
Oh my God. You know what? I think it's actually mango. Like I wouldn't, I don't, this is hard, but mango is just, it's so good.
Last one. What is your, and I want to know if this is really secret or if I already know this. So, what is your secret talent or hidden skill?
Oh, secret talent or hidden skill? Secret and hidden. This is a really tough one.
Could
Like
be
what
like as
kind of
small or weird as anything.
like what kind of things are we talking about here? Like are they quirky and weird or just something that
Yeah, like summarize, like someone who's memorized pi to like 20 digits, or someone who actually had like a black belt that I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
I honestly can't think of this. Do I have no secret talents or hidden skills? I'm just an open book. I mean, I am fluent in French, but that's not really a secret talent or hidden skill, but I did
I
do
don't think
French
I knew that
immersion.
though.
Yeah, I did once have an Australian accent, so that might be a hit. I can't really pull it back anymore. But my family moved to Australia for a year when I was like around my daughter's age, 1.5 to 2.5. So I really started talking there, and I started speaking with an Australian accent. So maybe that's maybe that's one. I don't know. I'll have to come back for another episode with my
Yeah,
with my
with
hidden
your secret
talent.
talent prepped.
Mhm.
Although I feel like the Australian accent's a pretty good one.
It's a good one.
Lindsay, thank you so much. I am so, so excited for everyone to pick up a copy of your beautiful new book, even for the people who are like, I'm not a meal planner, I'm not a meal prepper. I promise you, you are going to love this.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your support and encouragement because it definitely helped to have someone who is a pro in this area support me on the days when I was like, what did I get myself into? Why did I do this?
Next episode is the secret lives of people who write cookbooks.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for having me.